Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a concerning pattern that is pretty much already unfolding across the United States and that will be continuing for the next several days. Um, I will be also briefly mentioning a winter storm that will be occurring across the next few days and the impacts from that and the various snow amounts and ice amounts that it will bring. It will be a shorter video. I'm trying to keep it around 10 to 15 minutes today. Alright, so before we get into this, I do want to say if you are new to this channel, hello and welcome. I'm a weather enthusiast. I talk about the weather. I love the weather. So if you find yourself in that same boat and you like this content, obviously once you watch the video, if you haven't decided yet, consider liking and subscribing and commenting. And I always say this at the beginning because I always forget at the end. I get too carried away by the weather. Okay, so let's start talking about the weather. So the concerning part of the video, or sorry, the forecast that I'm talking about in this video, there is really the cold temperatures that are occurring. Really, currently they kind of settled in the past few days. Really, after yesterday's remaining winter storm that occurred across the northern United States, I will show you some of the snowfall amounts that it dropped. Rather incredible, some of the snows that we saw. There were even some amounts approaching 3 feet across portions of the UP, which it truly was just an incredible snowstorm. So let me first show you, though, what I am really concerned about, and that is the unseasonably cold air that is occurring right now across the United States. So notice this was how it looked like on Sunday. Right now, it is Wednesday, so again, this is negative hours. This is in the past, and this is how it unfolded. As you can clearly tell, some of these temperature anomalies are just stunning, especially on the cold side, because these warm anomalies, if this was, say, June, and we saw such, or July, such above average temperatures, that would be concerned because that would indicate the heat wave, and a pretty remarkable one. But in this case, since it is February, it just indicates temperatures in the 60s or 70s, so it's more just of a pleasant side effect of this, of this occurrence. But this cold air right here is just truly, I mean, almost off the charts. You can see that coloration is pretty much approaching negative 28 degrees in terms of Celsius. So in Fahrenheit, that is an even more significant anomaly. So some of these temperatures, even though it is almost late February into early March, meteorologically spring starts in really just 7 days, or since I think February ends the 28th, it's less than 7 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. So the point is, it's not far out, and we're seeing such a cold blast of air. So I guess it just goes to show that you shouldn't get caught off guard, or don't let your guard down up until the end of winter, because these winter outbreaks could sneak out at pretty much any time of the year. And you'll notice that some of these temperatures are just brutal. I mean, look at Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, negative 20s, right, into the negative teens. These are not wind chills, these are actual temperature feels like. We have a lot of frost hard freeze warnings for the southwest into portions of Los Angeles, San Bernardino, areas that are highly populated and aren't typically used to such cold weather. So it just goes to show you the scope of this massive, brutal polar outbreak. Thankfully, this thing is going to be already kind of, I guess, moving away, and it is already, I think the worst part of it has occurred. But let me just show you this and play this into forward motion. So this is what we are at right now when I'm recording this video, 6 p.m. Thursday. Notice tonight, another very, very cold night ahead for much of the United States. So tonight, today, it's going to be dangerous for many folks, especially further north across North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, centered across kind of the heartland of the country. Further east, chilly, not too bad. Into southern Canada, it is, again, very barbarically cold. As you get towards the south, it's actually above average, but you can see it's just really a sliver of the United States that's warmer than average. Into tomorrow during the day, you can see right there, 12 p.m., 6 p.m., very cold, even as far south as Dallas, Oklahoma. We will have a snow system going on at this current time. I will show you that in just a second. Notice the warm air kind of out ahead of it, though again, very limited, but pretty concentrated across portions of Georgia and Alabama and various other states in the southeast. Notice that as I get into tomorrow night, so this is now Friday during the day, and now Friday during the evening, the cold stays. It's not as brutal, but some of these temperature readings are still very, very cold for how late in the year it already is. And you can see a lot of southern Canada into the negatives in the Midwest. Again, this is the nighttime lows, so this isn't the daytime, thankfully. But even during the daytime, many areas, as far south as Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, not getting above freezing. And this is late February. And let me tell you that there have been days in late February in my area, in the years prior, that have gone into the 60s and even 70s on rare occasions. So, getting above freezing is really below average. Not as much as it could be, and will be across further towards the west, say Nebraska, South Dakota. But again, this thing looks to be moderating as we get towards the weekend. There will still be a few pockets of chilly air remaining, and the warm air does try sneaking in, but you can see that it's really lackluster at first, and the warm air does struggle to kind of take hold. By the time we get into midweek next week, so around 7 days from today, we start seeing a warm anomaly potentially taking their shape. You could see actually very warm, but how long lived that is, you could see according to this model, it's just a few days, and then we see more cold air. Hopefully not too barbaric, but for some areas it definitely can be. And you could see March 11th, some of these areas across the South Dakota and Minnesota could still be dealing with negative. So this part of the country just really deals with, probably the coldest temperatures across the United States. And really, yes, that will be peaking in the next few days. So let me go to a high-res model, the NAM 12KM. It's a very good model. I think it does a decent job with the temperatures. And let me just play this forward too. So this is the most updated model run. Notice this is into tonight. So this is what hasn't occurred yet. You can see 12 hours in the future. Here's a timeline: 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Around this time frame, the temperatures will really peak in their intensity for cold, and you can see it's really cold. The 32-degree line almost reaching the Gulf Coast shoreline, which again, this is more typical of what we would see in January or February or early February, not late February, almost March. And you can see that the Southwest also dealing with very chilly temperatures. Seattle dealing with cold. And then we do start seeing some very warm temperatures across the Southeast, where it is slightly or actually significantly above average. But then anywhere else, it's pretty cold. And you can see tomorrow during the day, right, many areas that you see that blue line, this will be our high temperature actually right here. Here will be. So Chicago, maybe 20s, right? Cincinnati, around maybe breaking freezing, 36, 35, not too bad. Minneapolis, around 10. Des Moines, around 12, 13, 14 degrees. Lincoln, Nebraska, again, somewhere between 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Very chilly. You can see much of the Northeast is kind of hovering in that near freezing range, which, again, it won't be as bad for you. But further west, my goodness, it's definitely going to be cold. And you can see that yet again, on Friday morning, Thursday night into Friday morning. Very cold temperatures yet again. Just a bit more, I guess more refined just towards the north and west, and two of the the Great Lakes and into the Upper Plains. So not as widespread, but you can still see that overall it's still below average. Again, it's just more moderate. So definitely a brutal Arctic outbreak. I mean, this thing definitely set quite a few records. So that was definitely something that was impressive. And it's still going on. I'm just kind of reporting about it towards the tail end of this forecast. Now, let me show you this winter storm that will be occurring. Sorry about that. And let me use the most latest HER model. Unfortunately, the most latest model run of this model is just still processing. So I'll go back a few hours to show you the full extent of how this tomorrow's snowstorm may play out. So this is the timeline. This is today, 4 p.m., 5, 6. This is when I'm recording, 7 Central Time. Notice we have quite a bit of precip across the Southwest. This will continue into the overnight. We do have a bit of ice across the South. You did see some snow earlier across Missouri, southern Illinois, Arkansas, Oklahoma. You will kind of get into a lull, a brief period of, less precipitation. But by tonight, later in the night, the wee morning hours, 2, 3, 4 a.m., we start seeing some snow across Indiana, but a lot of ice. I mean, that is a lot of ice to be occurring. A very large area under some freezing rain, freezing drizzle, so that will make things treacherous. Again, pretty heavy rain potentially occurring across the areas that have already seen very heavy rain, so not good. And I noticed we start seeing a snowy side blossom into Illinois, Iowa. We see actually decent snow rates, and also occurring in a pretty cold environment, so some of these accumulations will be pretty substantial for especially how unorganized the system appears. But then notice that into Friday evening and overnight, this spills into the Northeast, so a bit of sleet, snow from New York before transitioning to snow, and areas south as well, similar situation. But just north, right, cities like Boston or states like Rhode Island, Connecticut, you will see mainly snow out of this, especially the northern areas. Some of these areas will transition over. Actually, many will. You could see areas like Boston potentially, but you could see a lot of these precipitation rates get maximized, and we could actually see a very decent snowfall event for many of these locations. And just to drive that point forward, or drive it home, if you will, you could see decent amounts across these areas. Though again, I think these may be a bit underestimated because it's assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. Some of these will be falling at a higher snowfall ratio. It will be more fluffy snow, so that could be more closer to a 12-to-1. So you can multiply this by say 1.2, 1.5, and you'll get the more accurate amounts. But then as you get towards the northeast, you realize that they're higher, and these maybe even some of these may be still underplayed. So yeah, you can see a very, very generous event for Connecticut, Rhode Island, and again, a decent system to say the least. So this is definitely something to watch for. And you can see that many models actually show something very similar. The NAM, it's a bit too excited about this. I think it shows too much snow back here. It's usually a bit cold bias, so I don't think this has the best handle on it. Let me go back to the Continental US. FV3 high res, usually decent model, but though again, I'm not sure. I think a lot of this is, it does include sleet in its forecast, so this won't really be snow across northern New Jersey, Pennsylvania. But further north, it should be. And do note that global models like the GFS also show that. Again, ignore this. This is just going to be ice mainly, so those are way too high. But over here, especially north again, decent accumulations. Models like the Canadian also, I think, more realistic. A scenario like this, and you can see it does concentrate quite a bit of snow across the northeast as it gets squeezed between a high pressure and a low pressure trying to move north. High pressure move to the south, so that's why it maximizes those rates. So let me play that again from the Canadian, which I think has a good handle, and you can see right there, boom, you see a lot of ice, see a lot of snow, and there into Friday morning, Friday night, or Friday during the day, you can see it really maximizes a lot of those precip amounts, and there's that high pressure from the north driving a lot of these heavy snowfall rates up much more than they would typically, and that they will be further back where some of the snow will be lighter. So you can see that kind of occurs, and it's it's a decent event. But after that, I do want to say there will be a little bit of chillier according to Canadian, but let's just take a look at the GFS since it goes out far and into a little bit of the long range. There's that system, the colder moderates. You can see we see some warm air spilling in, and it looks like the good news out of the upcoming next few weeks as we enter into early March is that there will be warmer, right? So I guess that's nice. It will be drier. So for areas that are dealing with wet, floods and whatever, you'll be drying out. Northwest seeing some much needed precipitation, but then look. You know how the West saw a lot of precip earlier on in the year. Now they've dried out. They still need some more. There are some increasing signs that there could be a period of active weather coming for the West. So look, it starts off around March 5th time frame. Look, we see some decent snow. Nothing blockbuster, but definitely a few inches, maybe even up to a foot across higher elevations, and it transforms into a big system across the Midwest. Then we see another system move in. You can see it's a big one, moisture laden, and it's similar to what we saw in December. And again, produces a lot of rain, potentially severe weather across the plains. And then we see another one moving in. So a potentially more active pattern for these areas across the west, which would be very good. You can see the total snowfall reflects that. We start seeing some of those higher amounts. Potentially much needed active pattern heading towards the west. And you can see that the accumulations are, in terms of precip, are substantial, and the models have been pretty consistent with this. Obviously, slight variations with each one, but you could argue that it's been getting more intense with each model run, from the GFS at least. Canadian doesn't go out as far, but it still shows some precip at least. And if I were to click on hour 240, you can see that it shows at least one decent system moving in, again, around that March 3rd, 4th, 5th time frame. So that's definitely something encouraging. European, this one only shows us the precip, so doesn't distinguish between rain and snow, but it's useful to look at whether or not, deciding if there's any precip coming into the west, which is what we're trying to figure out here. And you can see it does show a little bit right there into this upcoming Sunday across Northern California, though, again, that's not really an event we're watching for. We're watching for that March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and you can see that the European actually introduces a bit ahead of that into March 1st, a bit of a rain or precip into California, which is good, and then continues that into the 3rd, into the 4th, decent snows across and rains across Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and then we see a larger system potentially moving in, but the European keeps it pretty minimal. But we'll have to see because it's still pretty far out, but definitely more active period, so that's good news. Alright, so yes, that's basically it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, stay prepared, or get prepared for that little system of snow and ice, especially for the Northeast, where it's not going to be so little and actually could be significant. Otherwise, that is basically all I have for you. Stay safe. See you on the next episode.